Welcome back to CVM Live. Now time for the major stories in detail. Member of Parliament for Southwest St Andrew and former Kingston Mayor Angela Brown-Burke has come out swinging, distancing herself from any impropriety in the massive scandal that has rocked the Manchester Municipal Corporation. CVM Live's Nicole Wilson has that story.
Member of Parliament Dr. Angela Brown-Burke distancing herself from the most recent scandal at the Manchester Municipal Corporation. Her comments followed the resignation of Deputy Mayor of Mandeville Irving Facey after allegations that a payment for work in the parish was disbursed before the voucher was approved.
I want to use the opportunity to categorically state that I am in no way involved in any of the activities that we have heard in recent times in the news.
Dr. Brown-Burke is calling on individuals who believe they have evidence to implicate her in the scandal to come forward.
If there's anyone with any information about Angela Brown-Burke being involved, take it to the police. They are the ones who will be able to sift through whatever anyone has there to come to the truth. My position is constant and remains as it has been.
Dr. Brown-Burke says much has been done to make local government what it is today, and she has no intention to bring that work into disrepute.
In local government, we have worked too hard to rescue the image, the name, the reputation of local government, to build back public confidence in local government for me to be involved in anything like that. I have not been, and my name cannot be credibly called before, no, nor in the future.
She says acts like corruption should be denounced.
All well-thinking Jamaicans should be on the side of the right thing to do. And we have been seeing just how much corruption and anything like that, how much it diverts the money away from the public purse and how it affects the work that, in this case, the parish council would have to do.
The Member of Parliament is hoping for a conclusive investigation.
I want to support the work of the Manchester Parish Council and the statement put out by the officers of the People's National Party, which is that the police, the authorities that are in there, for them to do what they have to do in terms of the investigation as swiftly as possible so that they can come to some kind of conclusion to end any speculation about exactly what has happened.
Nicole Wilson, CVM Live.
Deplorable road conditions in the community of Golden Springs, St Andrew, prompted a protest from its residents who were seeking assistance from the Prime Minister after they say efforts to engage their political representative proved futile.
There was a heartfelt plea by a handful of Golden Spring residents who descended from their hill to complain about the state of the roadways that crisscross their community.
We are here to appeal especially to the Honourable Prime Minister and specifically to our Member of Parliament, Mrs. Juliet Cuthbert-Flynn. The problem is, and our representative knows, that the road to community development begins with the development of community roads. The roads have been bad for well in excess of 30 years.
Some 4 years ago, residents spent over $700,000 of their own funds to effect remedial work to the major roads. And today they still make efforts to provide relief to those that traverse the roadways.
Right now, if you attend Golden Spring, you will see people filling in huge craters with stones. It is as though they are packing a septic pit. When Mrs. Cuthbert-Flynn came to the constituency, she knew. It's not a matter that she wasn't aware. Several audits informed her of the conditions, most of which were infrastructure problems and roads. So she knew what she was taking on. Why isn't she delivering?
Assistance.
We have made all the possible representation to our Member of Parliament. We have been to our community council meetings at the Stony Hill Heart Academy in Stony Hill, to no avail. We have been to the KSAC. We have demonstrated at the KSAC, and Mr. Robert Hill invited us to listen to our plight. Nothing has been done by the KSAC. Mr. E.G. Hunter at the National Works Agency has committed equipment to repair the roads. we haven't seen any making good on that commitment.
Joel Crosskill, CVM Live.
Well, CVM Live made contact with MP for the constituency, Juliet Cuthbert-Flynn, who declined to comment. She told a reporter she is not willing to make a statement until discussions with the parish council regarding their stewardship of the parochial roads has taken place. And in a CVM Live update, workers at the Accountant General's Department in downtown Kingston returned to work today despite challenges with the building that they say pose an immediate health risk. Here's Nicoy Wilson, and he spoke with the president of the Jamaica Civil Service Association, O'Neill Grant.
Deep cleaning of computers and furniture at the Accountant General's Department AGD was undertaken over the weekend. But this does not solve the underlying problem. As president of the Jamaica Civil Service Association, O'Neill Grant points out, the problem goes beyond dust and mold.
There are instances where foul odor is within the premises, and it builds up over a period of time and then comes out into the atmosphere in the building. So there seems to be significant challenges at the location, and while the staff continues to do their work and are professional, from time to time they still go outside and take what they refer to as these oxygen breaks to come out of the environment that's causing them to feel discomfort.
On his visit of the site on Monday, employees continued to lodge complaints.
There continues to remain, though, some challenges in terms of the storage of those pieces of furniture that are deemed to have mold on them, and that they still are in a space within the premises. Some staff members were still complaining of itching skin, not breathing properly. They were advised that they should go to their medical practitioners to get some certification from them that they are in fact experiencing these, and to tender these results to the Accountant General's Department for follow-up by the department.
Grant is urging employees to get certification from their doctors about what they are experiencing and to tender same to the AGD so that it can be followed up. He says the Finance Minister, Dr. Nigel Clark, has promised that he will personally ensure that the matters at the building are rectified. The Finance Minister on Friday said he would convene a meeting with employees at the AGD, but repeated calls to him and the department to confirm if the meeting took place went unanswered. Last week, employees of the AGD congregated outside the building, protesting problems with the structure that they believe pose an immediate health risk. Nicoy Wilson, CVM Live.
Meanwhile, investigations are still ongoing into the brutal murder of Clarendon businessman John Brandon Murray at the Mayfair Hotel on West Kings House Road on Sunday. The police say they are pursuing several leads. CVM Live's Khadija Thomas spoke with the crime officer for the St. Andrews Central Police and has this report.
Speculation is rife that Murray's murder was a contract killing. The police, while not confirming the speculation, say they are not ruling out the possibility based on information received. Officer in charge of operations for the St. Andrews Central Division, DSP Winston Hunt, told the CVM Live that the police are now approaching the matter with an open mind after receiving reports that John Murray was working on some plan in another parish.
From some information I received, he's working on a project at Mount Pleasant in St. Andrews Football Academy. So we'll be speaking to them to see if there's any information or anything they know that can assist us, with a possibility of making a breakthrough in this matter.
DSP Hunt says Murray, who resides in Clarendon, was killed when the white Toyota Probox had driven onto the Mayfair Hotel that afternoon. Soon after, Murray received a phone call and left his room.
He came out along the roadway there. We were pounced upon by the two men who opened fire at him, hitting him several times. Where the men ran from the property, and we are assuming that they rejoined the car somewhere along West Kings House close.
DSP Hunt says the police are yet to identify the suspects, along with the registration of the Toyota Probox they were driving.
The registration, make, letter, and numbers of the car was not available up to this time. We are trying our best to ascertain those. The motive has not been established. We are going over every bit of information we get. We have a number of investigators assigned to explore all the information we have gotten so far.
Khadija Thomas for CVM Live.
Well, in a CVM Live follow-up, the Education Ministry has responded to the matter involving a teacher who was questioning how the ministry would recover funds after she received a letter stating that she had been overpaid over a 6-year period. Just last week, CVM Live had brought the matter to your attention involving the primary school teacher who had received a letter from the Education Ministry stating that they will be recovering funds from her salary due to an overpayment of over $160,000 between June of this year to March 2019. CVM Live spoke with the public payment is unfortunate, and they will be in contact with the teacher in ensuring that a favorable turnaround can be made. Some 40 jobs will be created as a result of a contract signed today between the Port Authority and Canadian Maritime Services Company Ocean. The 10-year agreement will be geared towards harbour towage services between both entities and will be in full service at the end of this month. Here's CVM Live's Khadija Thomas again with the details.
The Port Authority of Jamaica has now welcomed new business to its shores with the 10-year agreement with maritime company Ocean, set to create employment with the opening of a local office in Kingston.
Our intentions are to recruit local Jamaican seafarers, and once recruited and trained to operate these new machines, we will offer competitive wages and introduce them to Ocean's occupational, health and safety processes.
The Vice President of Ocean Business Development, Kevin Nichol, says the partnership with Jamaica will ensure that operations are conducted safely and efficiently. The agreement between the Port Authority of Jamaica and Ocean will meet the growing demand for harbour towing services through what has been described as state-of-the-art equipment and personnel who will be deployed. President of the Port Authority of Jamaica, Professor Gordon Shirley, says the joint venture is a major milestone set to contribute to development in the island.
We fully expect that with the 3 new tugs that they will be bringing from their fleet to Kingston, each capable of at least 70 tons bollard pull, that we will have no challenge in handling the very large vessels that now transit the Panama Canal and into our region.
Professor Shirley says the process was long and transparent, but Ocean was selected based on government guidelines for procurement. He says the maritime company will also provide dredging and rental of specialized equipment.
Ocean has signaled that they intend to expand their operations in Jamaica beyond this starting point. And in this regard, Ocean, I would point out to you, in Canada, offers, in addition to their harbour towage services, they do ship repair services and shipbuilding services.
2 of the tugboats are already being shipped to Jamaica by Ocean, which operates primarily in 4 Canadian provinces and now in Jamaica. Khadija Thomas for CVM Live.
Time now for regional and international news.
News in Barbados. The Barbados government on Monday says it is prepared to implement tough decisions to revitalize an ailing economy. This as they announced a series of new tax measures as part of new fiscal policies. Presenting her administration's first financial statement and budgetary proposals for 2018, Prime Minister Mia Mottley says that the new taxes underscored her government's desire to distribute the country's burden while protecting the vulnerable. Meanwhile, on the international scene, it is less than 24 hours until the historic summit in Singapore between the United States and North Korean leaders. The world will be watching to see if U.S. President Donald Trump can broker a deal to denuclearize the Korean peninsula. Delegations from both sides have been making final preparations before the meeting. Here's more from Al Jazeera.
In the final hours before the Singapore summit, President Trump was on the move. His motorcade heading to the official office of Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. But the president was not in a talkative mood. The Prime Minister is the host for Tuesday's unprecedented meeting and so also has a lot at stake. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un, who met the Premier on Sunday, says he knows the whole world is watching him. And so too are his people. The country's strictly managed media was quick to release pictures of Kim's arrival, reporting that his isolated country would discuss establishing a new relationship with the United States. That's significant. In some parts of Singapore, the security is high profile, but appeared to be absent in one of the places where it would have mattered. US and North Korean officials were jostled by the media as they left a hotel where they'd been finalizing details for Tuesday. Trump wants to persuade the North Korean leader to disarm, a deal that eluded his predecessors. But that's a process that will eventually have to involve others, says the leader of the campaign to abolish nuclear weapons.
This could be a historic meeting and a beginning of a process towards nuclear disarmament. And so it's definitely has a huge possibility. I think that's why it's so important that we don't just leave it up to these two men.
Watching from afar and wishing they were here, the leaders of 3 other countries with important stakes in this summit: South Korea's President Moon Jae-in, Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and President Xi Jinping of China. China, of course, the North's closest ally. And whatever happens here, Xi Jinping will be hoping it remains that way.
That's it for regional and international news. I am Nicole Wilson. Pleasant viewing.
Robert Morgan, the Director of Communications at the Office of the Prime Minister, who was also part of the delegation, and the financial expert, social and political commentator, Dennis Chung. Gentlemen, good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening.
Let's start with Mr. Morgan, who was in Canada. What is Jamaica getting out of the Prime Minister going to the G7?
I don't think that we should assess it in the instant as to what you're getting. I think foreign policy flows on a continuum, which is an incremental effort to achieve particular objectives. So particularly this summit focused a lot on climate change and climate change resilience, which is something that us in Jamaica and in the Caribbean face significant risks from. For example, when Grenada was devastated, I think it lost, the damage was about 200% of its GDP. Grenada was not in a position to recover and has still to a great extent not recovered. And what the Prime Minister was speaking to was, on one hand, the economic vulnerability of countries within the region, and on the other hand, seeking a partnership with G7 countries to see how we could work together, both G7 and small developing states, in terms of dealing with the whole issue of climate change resilience and the impact that it will have on small economies. Just to put it into perspective, Jamaica's impact on climate change in the world is negligible. But a country like the United States' impact on climate change is significant. But countries like Jamaica will be the ones, in the first instance, to suffer the most damage. People in Portland Cottage, people in Hold Harbour, and so on. And almost 50% of Jamaicans live near the coasts. So it was very important for the Prime Minister to articulate the need for more work to be done by G7 countries in partnership with small developing states to come up with a proper framework.
We've been talking about this for a while now at the United Nations and all those other things.
Well, when you're invited by the Prime Minister of Canada to sit among the 7 most industrialized nations in the world, to speak about the issue of climate change, it is a platform that when you are at the UN, you don't get that opportunity. You get a chance to sit with the Prime Minister. Had several bilaterals. He had bilaterals with Norway, he had bilaterals with Argentina, he had bilaterals with Kenya. Countries, he had a round table with the President the President of Canada.
As well. Dennis Chung, how did you see it?
Well, I agree with Robert. I saw the news reports about his discussions on the environment and the climate change, and I think it's very important. You said that this is not the first time he has been speaking about it, but you know, change is a process, you know, and the fact of the matter is that with each time we go and we repeat it and we keep saying it, and you know, it's very good that it's our Prime Minister who has been invited there, because it shows a certain amount of degree of respect for our Prime Minister, which is very good.
But gentlemen, beyond the photo ops and the taking of pictures and all of that, and how do we get beyond not that the feeling, but how do we get beyond the perception that might exist that this is just a grand talk shop and that there are concrete things that we would have pushed for when we send a high-power delegation, including the Prime Minister, to important sessions like this?
Remember that the Prime Minister was invited as a member of the outreach countries, and the Prime Minister's agenda, for want of a better word, was to articulate the challenges that exist for small developing states like Jamaica, like Grenada, and so on. The interesting thing coming out of this meeting, the Prime Minister has now been invited to the G20 in Argentina, in South America, which is the first time that the G20 is being held in South America. He has also been invited to the Special Ocean Summit in Oslo as well. Now, what is happening is that as the climate change discussion evolves, you see a more fast-paced discussion and desire by developing countries and developed countries to fast come to conclusions. Remember, Jamaica is also a signatory to the Paris Accord. And by 2020, several things are going to kick in with that, and countries are going to be forced to make changes. Yeah, so Jamaica has to advocate in these fora to see how we can best partner with these international partners.
Understood, but beyond that, we met with several other persons. We met with Uhuru Kenyatta, President of Kenya. What would have been the outcome of that discussion?
Well, a discussion like that would be a bilateral discussion where several objectives and plans would be discussed. For example, there were discussions on air travel between Jamaica and Kenya. There was discussions about the exchange of students. There was discussions about, and it was a funny discussion where the joke was by the Kenyan president that, well, we cannot run you down in the 100, but you cannot catch us in the distances. So there must be some collaboration that can take place in us helping them with their short distance runners and them helping us with our long distance runners. There was also, as I said to you before, cultural exchanges. As you know, Kenya is one of the stronger economies in the African and on the African continent, and there are obviously opportunities for large companies in Jamaica to do business with that population, which many of them have similar tastes to the Jamaican population, and there are also opportunities for Jamaicans to find opportunities in Kenya and for Kenyans to find opportunities in there in terms of academics and also business.
But Dennis, Charles, how do we begin to assess a trip like this? I mean, what should we be looking for?
Well, I think just a trip alone and him being invited alone is substantial.
What do we get out of that? I mean, apart from the prestige and the...
Well, I mean, it's ironic because I was speaking with some people today and I'm saying, if someone asks you to do something 20 times and you haven't gotten anywhere, when they ask you the 21st time, still go. Because that might be the breakthrough moment. And I think that we need to look at these things in that way. The development of human rights, for example, it didn't start with one visit or one demonstration. It's over a period of time. And I think that if you look at Jamaica, for example, even Jamaica as a country and how we're well known, it didn't start with just one thing happening. And therefore, I think that, as Robert said, you know, we go to the G7, then we go to the G20, we start establishing relationships, you know, and at some point in time, we're going to have a breakthrough. We might not even have the breakthrough on the environment and climate change, but it could be something else.
But,
you know,
but
I think it's important.
Singapore, who fortunately, unfortunately, we're often compared to, when Lee Kuan Yew was president there, Prime Minister, he famously did not attend many of these things because he said, to send a clear message home that I have challenges at home. I don't have time to be hobnobbing with persons who can't help me.
What year was that?
That's 20 years ago.
No, that was more than 20 years ago. Think about this.
That's fine. It's a different world.
Do remember
you have to do things differently.
Why do we still have this talk about who travels where and what's it costing and so on?
I don't know. I mean, I think that you have to have a certain level of control, right? But I think in today's day and age, travel is necessary. You can't have a leader sitting down in a country and, you know, not interacting with the world and going out there, developing relationships. So many times when I hear it, and I hear both administrations when they're in opposition, speak about it, about this thing costs so many millions and that. They don't look at the value added side of it and the long-term value added side, which I think is more important. If you sit down, take an example, if you sit down in your community, for example, for 10 years and you don't go anywhere, you know, the world is now a stage like, you know, 20 years ago, as you say, you know, being in your country. So I think it's necessary. What we need to do is ensure that the proper controls and assessments are there to ensure that when we spend money, that it's spent on something.
I think what is also important is when you travel, the people must be aware of the process as to why you're traveling, what is the objective of the travel, and what may be the results to come from the travel. So, for example, in our case, we go beyond the call to ensure that as many people in Jamaica understand what we're doing, where we're going, and why we're doing it, and whenever the benefits. So, for example, there was a trip that was taken to Morocco several months back, and that trip yielded results about a year after. And we did communicate to the public that this trip went to Morocco, and these were the results. You know, so, and the interesting thing about it is that a lot of the times people question your traveling because they are not aware of what the results are. I mean, if you look
can't blame them for that, though.
Which is true. I mean, if you look at the case in terms of tourism, you have to travel to promote Jamaica for tourism, and then you see the manifestation of the record numbers of visitors coming and the new lifts that are taking place from different countries. And that is how you have to justify why you're doing it. If you're traveling and you're not justifying the benefit to the country of the travel.
So like you're justifying Delano Seabright's travel bill?
I'm not saying anything about Mr. Seabright, but based on... All right, let's just be honest about it. Mr. Seabright is a chief advisor to the minister. The minister depends on him for particular things. The minister Mr. Seabright will be traveling with the minister as well as his chief advisor, just as how the Prime Minister is going to an important function in the G7 as his Director of Communications to manage his communications and assist him in whatever way he needs. I will be expected to travel with him as well. The Prime Minister's, my travel bill is probably not as much as Delano's, but I don't travel. I don't know. But it's, but I don't travel as much as Delano because I don't have to go and promote tourism as much as Delano.
But again,
and you see the results, you see the record tourism arrivals, and that is what we need to start looking at. What are the results of these trips?
Well, it's to draw the line between the trips, the travel, and the... But to come back to one of the questions asked to Dennis, and even to yourself, Robert, in the private sector, which Dennis is a part of, there are clear measures for these things. You have to tie these things back. The government, less so, it would seem, and I guess that's part of the challenge you would have.
How did this evolve into traveling?
Well, let's talk about something else. I mean, you know, the challenge we have, and you know, Robert's party and the other party is to blame that. As soon as an ants crawl over there, then everybody make a big noise about it, you know, and ants are a legitimate reason for go over there. But one of the things I always talk about, we talk about this $2 billion a year that the JUTC loses, right? If we had a good transportation system that costs us $20 billion a year and save us time on the roads and foreign exchange.
So it's cost benefit.
Exactly.
It's cost benefit.
And that's the sort of analysis that we need. But the numbers are there, though. If you look at the numbers.
And I didn't want to get drawn down into this discussion. But, so let me bring it back quickly to the conversation the Prime Minister had back at the G7 conference, actually.
Yes.
And maybe it's an example of this, where persons in Jamaica are not sufficiently informed about the audience the Prime Minister would have been speaking to, what specifically he would have said from a Jamaican perspective, why it would have been important for him to say to that group, and what benefits would redound back to Jamaica specifically from...
Which is why I'm here tonight. Right.
So in the last moments we have, just tell me some specifics into that discussion that we would not have been otherwise privy to.
All right, so in its presentation, the Prime Minister asked for a partnership, as I said before, a cooperation. One of the most important things the Prime Minister spoke about is that the inability of small developing states to have a fiscal space to budget for natural disasters. And also the issue that a lot of small developing states are categorized in a particular band where they are not able to access particular financing on the international market and within a particular interest rate regime. And the Prime Minister was of the view that upper income states need to partner with small developing states to create a new paradigm in which the understanding that based on the issues of climate change, based on the vulnerability of many of these states, using the case of Dominica, for example, which was devastated recently, that a new paradigm needs to take place. We're not looking for handouts. We're looking for a partnership, right? You guys have been doing a lot of things in terms of the environment. It is impacting us. What can we do together to mitigate the negative impacts that climate change is going to have on our populations? And I think that was one of the main messages that the Prime Minister spoke about when he addressed the G7.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Well, what I would say, though, is that I agree. I support the fact that the Prime Minister spoke about these things. But many times, though, and Robert will know this, too, a lot of the things that we talk about, we actually do more harm to ourselves than what the external.
You're talking about plastics?
Gentlemen, Robert Morgan and Dennis Chung, thanks for joining us this evening. Let's take a break. We'll be back on CVM Live.